All right, good morning, guys. We'll get started. It's good to have you guys here. Hopefully you are doing okay. What we're going to be doing this morning is we're going to be taking a look at a homework assignment that I've got going on for a portion of your textbook that I asked you to read yesterday, dealing with the civil rights movement. And what we'll be doing is we'll be exploring what we talked about a day ago. We'll be taking a look at themes. And in particular, we want to understand themes as the threads that run throughout the course of the class that are going to link everything together and allow you to write really good essays. So when we think about themes, like if you're being asked to write an essay question about World War II and you start trying to weave into it the Great Depression, there may be links there that are valuable to start looking at, except for the fact that those are two very different themes. One's economic, one is military, unless you start talking about what we're doing on the home front and being cognizant of the idea that you're supposed to be trying to see compare, contrast, cause and effect along a theme over time to see how our economics have changed, our American identity has changed. That's what we're going to be focusing on, taking a look at with your work in class. So if I could, I'm going to bring you first of all to my agenda for today. And like I mentioned, having this available as a Google document on your page, I've found that Schoology has become incredibly unreliable, especially given the fact that it's trying to deal with a workload that never was anticipated for this service to be using. The idea that it would be utilized as a platform engine for teaching on a daily and consistent basis, it's struggling underneath that burden. And so I would encourage you to have this Google document instead off of Schoology on your Chromebook as a place that you can go to without ever having to go to Schoology. That way, if we have a breakdown, I can still communicate with you. I can just type into the Google document that we have right here, the links that we'll be using to meet. Yesterday, I forgot to hit record, and so you'll see that I added a reminder to myself. And we are currently recording this session, so you will be able to watch it later on. Hi, how are you? Morning for the wave. So you'll be able to watch this later if you need to. Make sure you fill out your online attendance form. Attendance is something that the state of Minnesota has emphasized as being important, but different districts are treating this in different ways. Our district is being very aggressive with the idea that they want to take attendance on a daily basis. I don't know what sort of hassle that will turn into if you don't fill this document out. What I'm doing though is I'm watching to see who is attending the sessions that we have. And if I see that you attended the session and I recognize that you popped up there, then I typically can fix the attendance. But I don't go back through the videos and look for that sort of stuff. And you putting in your click right here and just filling this out is a quick way for me to make sure your attendance is taken care of. The homework that we have for tonight is very simple. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking a look at the civil rights movement as one of the themes that runs throughout US history. Because when we think about the civil rights movement related to slavery, we're going to find that it has components that are both American identity and also how we're socially composed. It's going to be getting into our economics and internal movements. And so this topic that we're studying right here, we will be taking a look at the civil rights movement of the 50s and the 60s to do justice to it, especially because if we're teaching a US history course and we leave out everything since 1945, that would be ridiculous. Our situation with race has improved in many different ways, but I think everybody can understand that we still have issues of racial intolerance inside of our country. And so that's what we'll be exploring with this activity. What I'm going to want you to do is I'm going to want you to click on this link. You'll open it up. And this is the video worksheet that you'll be working on for tonight. I'm going to want to have this submitted tomorrow when we're doing our session. I'd like you to have this done so that I'm able to discuss this with you. I've assembled this in a way that's going to help us do a review. So some of this material you'll find inside the video, or you're prompted to use the video. So it says, use the documentary titled The America in the 20th Century, the Civil Rights Movement. And so let me put quotes around this so you know what you should search. Yikes. And what I should have had is as well as your notes and textbook. complete this assignment. Because what this is a review. You need to know the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendments as far as what was attempting to try to make things better in the 1860s and 70s to try to help out African Americans. But then also we need to understand continuity and change over time. Even though these changes took place, in some ways things stayed the same. And so that's what this activity is going to be trying to walk you through, is key moments that if you do get a civil rights essay question, you'll be able to stay safe. But we also want to be able to understand there are some people in America who will argue that we don't even need to talk civil rights anymore because this was all resolved with the Civil War. It was not. So what you should do is you should go back to these instructions. Here is your instructions for how you stream online videos. And in fact, I should just give you this link instead. So I'm going to change the document. But use those instructions to be able to find then your video on Discovery Education. That'll make it better. And have this viewed for tomorrow, because what I'd like to do is when you come to class, I would like to talk to you about the civil rights movement and what you learned right here, kind of gateway you into then the period that we're looking at in the 1950s and the 1960s. And then we'll also be able to start weaving that together into where we're sitting right now as we move our way forward. So I'd like to then transfer on into taking a look at your period 1 review. And I'd like to point out to you that I've got for you a style guide that looks like this. John Irish created a new style guide this year. And what you'll find inside of here is that there's more detail, more assistance, more substantive supports. So the old one is going to be fine, but the new one is going to give us chances to work on our writing as well. And so I've given this to you as a link, but I'm not certain how much we're going to be playing with this. And the reason why is we just got this email yesterday. This email is from the College Board. We are going to have an online meeting tomorrow at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And the meeting is going to be with Trevor Packer, who is the guy who is the head of the College Board's testing division. For testing and instruction. And what he's going to be doing is he's going to be explaining to us what's going on with the AP test, why they're doing what they're doing, and then we'll be able to share this information with you, and it will be posted on their coronavirus update page, which I've got linked for you right back here. So for you guys, when you get up tomorrow, you should be able to see this. Sorry, when you get up on Friday, you should be able to see this with updated information about what our test is going to look like. I'll be able to review with you, though, what I get from the meeting on Friday as well. So if you don't want to bother looking at that, I'll run through all of those steps with you. So what we'll be doing today then is with the John Irish Style Guide, I'm putting this into your hands so that you can have this available once we get ideas about what's going on with the writing. I wouldn't spend a lot of time on this yet, though, because of the fact that we don't know what's going to happen to this testing schedule. So this is what your test was supposed to look like: 55 multiple choice questions, 3 short answer essay questions. And with question 1 and 2, you'll notice that they were specifically only going to be questions on periods 3 through 8. And then you had a choice option of periods 1 through 5 or 6 through 9 for the last essay question, along with a DBQ and an LEQ. My guess, again, if you take a look at the time limits they've given us, they said you're going to have about 45 minutes to work with. The only question that seems to align with is either our short answers or our LEQ. And it's really hard to imagine that they would have your AP test score writing on one long answer essay question where if they chose the wrong topic, you would get blown up. They don't want to have you guys look terrible to the rest of the world, because then it makes us look terrible as instructors. So I'm anticipating that they're going to tell us that we're doing this on the test. They've told us it's not going to be multiple choice. They've promised that it's going to be a writing prompt that can be checked afterwards for plagiarism and cheating. I'm not certain how they're going to pull that off, but I am waiting on the edge of my seat to see how they get that done. So what we'll be doing with this style guide then is today we're just going to be taking a look at how do we handle a short answer essay question. So as I scan down to here, they've got rules for SAQs. You may want to have this document open, and then you'll want to be able to kind of look this over, because I'll work out for you a couple short answer essay questions as we work our way through the review today. I'll be checking my chat also to see if you guys have any questions or concerns, so feel free to post any questions that you guys have. I don't see any yet. And so let me start off by pointing out to you where we are in the state of the world currently. Yesterday, we had a really interesting press conference that took a really long time. And the reason why it took a long time is because of the fact that we are now seeing a shifting stance that's being taken by the president, where the president received press briefings back in January and February telling him that the coronavirus was serious. And during that time, you'll remember we stayed in school. We really didn't know what was going to go on during that time period because our president was telling us during this time period that we were experiencing a hoax that was being very much over exaggerated, that this was something that we didn't need to be too worried about. We would be back to our normal lives by Easter. Yesterday, they came out and announced that if we do everything right with our coronavirus approaches, we are going to see casualty rates between 100 and 240,000 people inside the United States. And for the president, he changed his tune quite distinctly, where he said we need to be doing what we're doing right now for at least 30 days, potentially more. And that's now the new update that we have. When we start talking about numbers like thousands, millions, billions, trillions, many times because of the fact that we've got athletes in our country who are getting paid millions of dollars, we kind of get immune to those sorts of numbers. But if they're talking about the idea that we could lose 240,000 people inside the United States, if you take a look at the wars that we've had in the past, we are potentially looking at losing sometime soon more people than died in many of the wars that we studied combined together. And that's the best case scenario. And sadly, what we're getting news of is that there are still people inside the country who are not taking this seriously, where there are still multiple states that are not sheltering in place. This morning, Devin Nunes, who is from California, he's a representative. He argued that we should go back to school because things aren't as bad as they think. This is something where if you are eager for our quarantine to end, we do need to follow the best cases that the government is laying out for us, because of the fact that President Trump's mind has been changed by the doctors who are around him. And those doctors are pretty concerned about what's heading our direction. The new level, though, that is being watched currently is, while President Trump is now worried about what's going on with coronavirus, he is still really reluctant to use the tools that were created with the Defense Authorization Act, the Defense Production Act, to try to force businesses to do what they need to get on a wartime footing, like we saw with World War I and World War II. And so yesterday, the weird thing that was happening during the press conference that he was holding is he claimed that the governors and the doctors were over exaggerating the needs that they have for respirators and ventilators, face masks and ventilators used to treat people in the emergency rooms. And so we're trying to figure out how is it that we've got a president who believes that we're doing fine with equipment, but the governors and the doctors are giving a very different picture. And so I'm hoping that the president is right, that we've got enough equipment and it's just doctors and governors overreacting. When it comes to my situation, though, when it comes to medicine, I'm trusting the doctors first. And there are doctors all over the country who are complaining that they can't get the resources they need to keep people safe. And so that's what you should be paying attention to. Because you're getting a visual right now of the battle that goes on between states' rights, federal government, laissez-faire economics versus having social democracy or even socialism or communism as responses to what's going on. And what we're seeing right now is a president who is conservative, who is leaning towards a more business-oriented response. And you and I get to see the results as far as whether or not that's appropriate for a situation like the one that we're about to move into. If you do have any questions or concerns about any of the stuff that I just presented to you, the chat is available, or else I'll just have us open up our microphones at the end if you do have any sort of questions that you want to follow up with. But that's the state of the field that we've got going on right now. And in particular for you guys, the thing that you should be aware of is proper hand washing, taking care of your hygiene. Again, not having your hand go to your face is key. But one of the things that you should understand also is during our period of US history that we're in right now, one of our things of mythology has been rugged individualism. And what I want to highlight for you is the new battle that's going on. There are doctors who are right now who are saying that you should, when you go out in public, be wearing some sort of face shield, not like a N95 face mask to protect you from like doctor situations, they're saying things like you should wear like a bandana or something around your mouth. And the reason why they're saying that is because when you are talking to other people, you have small bits of saliva that come out of your mouth, and there could be virus droplets on top, viruses inside of those saliva droplets. So there are some doctors who are saying maybe we should be wearing something over our face when we're in our public. You'll notice, though, that that's a huge change that would be very much stylistically not what we love, especially being ruggedly individualistic. I'm going to be watching along with you to see if that becomes our normal, where over the next few weeks, do they start encouraging and do people start wearing things out in public like that, like some doctors are advocating? So anyway, that's where we're sitting with the coronavirus right now. I would love to get back together with you soon. I am feeling, though, that we probably will not be getting back together, at least within the next month, because of the fact that the president is doing a movement towards having us stay away from one another. For us, then, we have to figure out how we're going to be getting ready for the AP test. And so we're going to be working today with period 1 of your concept outline. And if you left your concept outlines at school and you don't have them with you, all you need to do is go to AP Classroom. When you go to AP Classroom, take a look at the bottom of the home page. You will find that there's a course area down here. And if you click on AP US History Course and Exam Description, it will then bring up this document for you. On this document, what we're going to be taking a look at is we're going to be taking a look at period 1 today. And what we'll be starting into is we're going to be taking a look at how do you use these things to help you to get ready for the AP test. At this point, you should have a study guide and flashcards if you're planning on using them, because we do need to get your content knowledge to a really good level. In your free time, on top of whatever assignments I give you, you should be carving out time to review. But you shouldn't review everything equally. You don't need every piece of content equally. In fact, when you take a look at period 1, 2, and 3, you're going to most likely find that these are the time periods that are the most tricky for you. So period 1, I want to highlight, first of all, when you take a look at the John Irish Style Guide, John Irish's Style Guide points out that on the original AP test for short answers, period 1 was only an option for one of the 2 choice SAQs. But now they've reduced down our testing field to periods 1 through 7. What that means is I think you're going to have more of a chance of having period 1 on the AP test, but the College Board understands that we didn't teach that as deeply as the other time periods, because when it comes to weighting, there was no chance it was going to show up on the DBQ. There was no chance it would be part of these short answers. It was a choice option right here. So if the College Board does throw you a period 1 essay question, they need to be prepared that most of the country will struggle with a period 1 short answer essay question. So we're going to be able to do this review quick with the understanding that for you and I, we will then be able to ramp up if we find out details on Friday that we need to be a little bit stronger with this material. If you don't have this written down on the outside of your style guide, then remember 1491 is indicating for you that you need to know about US history prior to European arrival. So you need to be able to talk about the Native Americans that predate the Europeans and how they spread out throughout the United States over periods of time that we're still trying to categorize because of the fact that they didn't leave behind a written tradition. They left behind an oral tradition that largely got wiped out with epidemics and warfare. So we don't have definitive dates for where we should start from. So this is code for just anything before Columbus. 1607 is Jamestown. So if you could please, for your concept outline for period 1, just please pay attention to the fact this is chapter 1 in your textbook. So if you do find that you're having any problems with this material, that's where you want to go back to make sure that you are keeping yourself safe. As we move forward then, I want to highlight for you a couple different things. They do give you the concept outline in a glance, this unit at a glance, and instructional methods. I wouldn't worry too much about that. They do give you a contextualization piece. We're going to come back to that at the end of this activity that we're doing today. I would like you to please go down to topic 1.2, Native American Societies Before European Contact. Now, what I want to highlight for you is as you start doing your review process, you'll want to notice a couple different things. Number 1, notice the thematic focus that they have, where they're going to want you to be able to run a geography and the environment thematic focus, because that's what they're emphasizing. The idea that when Native Americans arrived in the Americas, they went into different climate zones, they went into different geographic areas, and as you learned in human geography last year, they're going to then acclimate to the environment that they're in, and their lifestyle is going to look radically different from one another. The Plains Indians are going to look different than the Aztecs compared to the Iroquois, compared to the Cherokee, and they want you to be able to explain that in writing. The big thing that I want to help you out with, though, is as we do look at your concept outline, I'd like you to notice your learning objective on the left-hand side. So it mentions to you, explain how and why various Native American populations in the period before European contact interacted with the natural environment in North America. So when we take a look at the question, explain how and why Native populations interacted with their environment, you've got different skills that you're supposed to be working on: compare, contrast, continuity and change over time, cause and effect. And so what you're going to be taking a look at here is you're taking a look at the effect that the geography and the climate has on Native American populations. So what I would like you to be able to do is you should take a look down this list right here. And what I would like you to check is I'd like you to check to see, do you have in your immediate knowledge Native American groups that you can use with recall for each of these different examples? And the nice thing about this concept outline is they're writing your essay for you. They're telling you over here, this is a potential short answer or long answer essay question you might get on the AP test. And here are acceptable answers that you can give. There are some of my kids who will try to wing it on their essays, where they'll be like, oh, Native Americans, they used every part of the buffalo. They want more detail. They're already giving you chunks like that. Where if you take a look at this item right here, the spread of maize cultivation from present-day Mexico northward to the present-day American Southwest and beyond supported economic development, settlement, advanced irrigation, and social diversification among societies. That is a body paragraph that you can use to describe how Native Americans were impacted by their situation that they were living in. And so what you should be thinking about is, do you have specific Native American groups that you could use to explain this further? They're looking for a proper noun. And so I'm going to bring you back to the John Irish Style Guide right here. Here are the rules for writing a short answer essay question. Number one, when you're writing a short answer essay question, make sure you label what part is you're answering. Remember, there are 3 parts to all SAQs. Label what you're doing. If you're answering the first of the 3 parts, label it A, label the second part B. And for all of your short answer writing, there should be solid paragraphs for each element that you're writing. You should use the idea method that you see right here. And number 1 says you need to identify a proper noun. That's where many people fall apart when they're trying to work their way through this, is they'll describe how Native Americans during this time period used all parts of the buffalo, or they built like huge temples in Mexico. And what they're looking for, and this should be over here on the right-hand side, so have your pencils ready, you can use for this element right here, any of these groups: the Inca, the Aztecs, the Pueblo, and the Anasazi. I'll say that again: Inca, Aztec, Pueblo, and Anasazi. Now, inside your textbook on page 9, you've got information that helped you out with this. And so this was all chapter 1, but chapter 1 was done over the summertime when you weren't really hanging in because you didn't even know what you were getting into. So when you take a look at the map that you've got sitting up here in my little text chat box that you've got, you'll notice that there's a map on page 9 that lays out for you the different regions that they're describing. So the societies responded to the aridity of the Great Basin. If you take a look down in the Great Basin, you can see a number of Native American groups who are located down there. Not a lot of them were ones that we spent a lot of time focusing on, but if you start blending these two together with the idea that you've got the Pueblo and the Anasazi who are near that area, that's a distinction that the College Board isn't going to get too worried about you making a mistake on, especially if you're able to cite a proper noun, describe it, so actually summarize what that proper noun is, and then connect it back to the question. So if your essay question was explain how Native Americans in Mexico and the American Southwest were able to respond to the environmental challenges that they had, and you're able to talk about how in the Aztec culture they built pyramids, they had trade networks, that you had the growing of maize, you will be totally safe and fine. In the Northeast, Mississippi River Valley, and along the Atlantic seaboard, you've got a number of Native American groups that we discussed in class. And so if you want to put over in the margin over here, Cahokia, the Iroquois, the Creek, the Choctaw, but in particular the Cherokee that you guys learned about, you learn about those Native American groups. They established trade and agriculture. They were very much creating complex civilizations before the arrival of Europeans. In the Northwest, you've got the Chinook and others, and all they're trying to highlight here is you did have Native Americans who were involved in hunting and gathering, and they would use the ocean to try to get the stuff that they need. But here's your goal as you're doing your review. If you're thinking to yourself, holy cow, Native American history from like the first week we were together, I'm done. You're not done. You probably need more time to study period 1 than you need to study period 7. And period 7 should be pretty good for you because of the fact that you've been taking notes, you've been studying, hopefully you hit your stride, you know your content pretty well. So while Adolf Hitler and World War II might be your sweet spot, you may need to take some time right now to identify what proper nouns would you be using to answer a question like this one. And if you discover in your learning objectives that there are certain questions that you hope they don't ask about, don't hope, instead actually plan ahead and be safe. As we move down through your concept outline, then the next part of the concept outline is talk about European exploration in the Americas. So I'm going to be tossing you page numbers. In chapter 1, this was on page 14. So you may want to jot down that page number and notice the question that they have over here. Explain the causes of exploration and conquest of the New World by various European nations. With the cause and effect question, remember that we had a brainstorming style where with causation, we talked about how there's going to be multiple causes that lead to the one final element that you've got over here. If you take a look at what's going on with this theme is America in the world. How does America get along with other countries and how does that impact us? And so anything that goes into writing about this topic is most likely going to be related to this big idea. Over here, they give you the whole answer. And so when they do this, you should be thinking about how they want new sources of wealth. They were in competition economically and militarily. There was a desire to spread Christianity. And in particular, what I would encourage you to put down underneath here is this big concept that we taught you back at the beginning of the year. I would write down these countries: Portugal, Spain, France, and England. What I would be doing then is I would be trying to figure out how did each of them have elements of this in their behavior over in the New World. When it came to the Spanish came over and they were involved in military competition to spread Catholicism to the New World. They were using the encomienda system. They led to the rise of a mestizo class of people who are mixed race. Meanwhile, for the French, when they came over, they were looking for their 1F furs compared to the 3 Gs for the Spanish. For the English, we learned about mercantilism, how they saw the colonies as a way to make wealth for the home country. And then you had a bunch of people who were settling for a variety of different reasons along the eastern seaboard. And the reason why I bring the English and the French in is, remember, with this time period is 1491 to 1607. There's an overlap between this and period 2. So if I was looking at a place where period 1 might work its way into your essay questions, when you take your essay test in the spring, this is the place where I can see it. I'm asking you a question like compare and contrast Spanish colonization and British colonization, which is another skill that you see woven in, where you're seeing America in the world. Not quite this question, but if you actually play it out, this question opens up the door then for compare and contrast. As you scan down then, you'll notice the next section is the Columbian Exchange, Spanish exploration and conquest. This is also starting on page 14, and this is the remainder of chapter 1. And so as you work your way through, the way that I would do your review is simple. Check out your thematic approach that's sitting up here. Take a look at the potential question and notice it would not be difficult for them to ask this question standalone style on the AP test. For many kids, they won't take a look at these yellow study guides, and then when they get to the AP test, they're like, man, that was a challenging question. And most of my strong students are going to point out this is not a difficult question at all if you prepare beforehand. And in fact, the College Board has actually had some questions on their test that is identical to their learning objective. So if you think explain the causes of the Columbian Exchange, think about what caused the Columbian Exchange to take place. Groups of people interacting with one another for the first time after isolation, discovering these new items. You're going to have these items brought back to Europe that causes positive benefits. The diseases brought by Europeans to the Native Americans is going to have negative impacts. But then also the effect that it has on Europe and the Americas, both positive and negative, is something that you'll want to be able to explore. Over on the right-hand side here, then, the way that I would be preparing over the next day is I would be filling out over here your proper nouns. And that is your key. Where most of the kids fail on their short answer essay questions isn't that they answer in a factually wrong way. It's instead that they're going to answer in a way that is too vague to actually earn the credit that they're trying to earn. You need to be able to identify a proper noun. So if you're able to discuss how in the Columbian Exchange, the potato was brought back from the Americas to Europe, and it became the staple crop for many people, including the Irish, who learned to survive on that product. That's how you do cause and effect when it comes to the Columbian Exchange as an effect. If you're talking about the effect on Native Americans, positive and negative effects, where there are goods that are being brought over the Native Americans that I've never seen, but they've also got diseases. And you'll see down here, they're giving you that already. So if you announce, oh, they're bringing diseases, that's something they've already provided for you. The College Board is saying to you, we've already given you this. Go further with a proper noun. And that's where you start talking about like smallpox and other sorts of things that are being brought, and what impact does it have? Do you have tangible examples about how it wiped out groups like the Aztecs or other Native American groups on the eastern seaboard that you could describe? Can you talk about the introduction of livestock, especially horses, that are being brought over? So you're going to find the College Board gives you enough here to guide you, but they want you to have proper nouns that you should be putting over here that you can use to go further. Labor, slavery, and the caste system. We're talking right here about how society is being shaped and built. And so what we're going to find is when we start talking about slavery in the Spanish colonial system, the civil rights activity that I have you working on tonight is just an extension of that theme. So even though we don't have slavery in the 1940s and 50s, the video clip I'm going to have you take a look at is up until 1865. We still have slavery in the system that's established during this time period with Africans who are being held against their will to be used to grow cotton. And so we're going to find that this theme runs from our earliest times in our textbook, and there's still implications of it nowadays. Notice your question: explain how the growth of the Spanish Empire in North America shaped the development of social and economic structures, cause and effect. So keep that in mind when you're taking a look. They'll give you things like the encomienda system, trade that's happening with the slave networks. And so at this point, what you should be working on is, number one, when you look at a question like this one, do you feel confident you'd be able to write that essay? If the answer is no, you should go back to your textbook and do a reread. You should also check over here, would you be able to use these elements inside your essay? And do you have proper nouns for each of these things that would allow you to write a really good specific essay that meets the standards that the College Board is looking for? As we scan forward, though, you're going to probably find that there are some things that you look at and you're like, this is totally obvious right here. So like this one, explain how and why European and Native American perspectives of others developed and changed in the period. We spend a lot of time talking about how Europeans and Native Americans traded with one another, but they also went to war with one another. They adopted aspects of each other's culture. And you may find that for some of these concepts, this is not difficult for you and you're good with this. Just accept that and move on once you've got proper nouns over here that you're able to use. You're going to find then that inside these period packets, they're going to be flashing for you different skills that you can be using that could show up on the AP test. One of them is contextualization, and that's what we're waiting to find out about with tomorrow's meeting, because contextualization is a big element of what takes place with long answer essays and DBQs. The problem, though, is that if we're doing short answer essays, contextualization is not nearly as important as a skill that we need to be able to dig into. For context, though, remember that you're trying to figure out what has happened previously that then you can compare to so you can link to a bigger trend or movement. Or what you want to be talking about is taking a look at different regions, different geographic areas, drawing on prior knowledge to be able to help yourself out. So if we think about explaining the context for European encounters in the Americas from 1491 to 1607, they do want you to be able to explain what happened with like the story of the Bering Land Bridge and how Native Americans created complex civilizations before European arrival. If we continue with context, though, we want to be able to think about what's going on with the Europeans. where in Europe, we had different trends and movements taking place. And so over on the right-hand side right here, be prepared to write down these ideas. Europe during this time period has gone through the Protestant Reformation. So as a result, you've got competition between different Christians about what the official Christian interpretation should be. We've also had the plagues that have taken place that has destabilized Europe. And we've got a system going on of competition militarily where they're looking for an opportunity to be able to get resources. You also have people who are exploring to try to find paths to Asia, which eventually will become fulfilled in the early 1900s with the open door policy you guys learned about from China. But we'll want to understand that the Columbian Exchange, with the Spanish moving here, changes everything over in Europe. The English want to catch up, the French want to catch up. And when it comes to Native Americans then, Native Americans are in a difficult spot because they realize there are multiple European countries that are looking to use the resources here in America. And in that picture, the Native Americans aren't certain where their place is. They'll try to adopt a middle ground that we talked about in class, where they'll try to balance each of the Europeans against one another, but they're not going to be able to do that well, as you guys have seen throughout the course of the class. Native Americans eventually, by the end of the late 1800s, have been pushed onto reservations. Their numbers have been diminished because of what has taken place. You've also got a skill at the end of these packets that are meant to give you a test drive of different skills you might be asked to flash on the AP test. Like this one is causation. Explain the effects of the development of transatlantic voyages from 1491 to 1607. They're giving you then the direction that questions might go, where they might want you to explore what's taking place with Native American settlement here, European encounters with Native Americans, with Africans, and how that establishes our country. What we will be taking a look at then tomorrow is when we come back together, I'm going to be talking to you about part 2 of the civil rights video that you'll be watching. So make sure you have part 1 done for tomorrow. But then tomorrow we'll be taking a look at period 2 to analyze the stuff that was going on during the colonial time. Before you take off, though, then here's what I'd like to share with you. I've got something that's broken down that we'll take a look at different short answer essay questions that the College Board has used in the past to train us. You'll notice John Brown on the front of this slideshow prompting you to do social distancing. Who knew that he was so culturally aware way back when? But these are questions that could pop up. And so I'm going to give you a chance to look at this. And what I'd like you to think about is take a look back in your concept outline, figure out what concept is being dealt with here. And I'd like you to think about, would you be prepared to answer this question? And if the answer is no, that doesn't make you bad. That just means in the next month, month and a half, 2 months, whenever they set the date to be, we've got to fix that. So question A, briefly explain one example of how contact between Native Americans and Europeans brought changes to Native American societies in the period from 1492 to 1700. Now, most likely you're able to go, oh, I remember, and you've got either a positive or a negative example of contact between Native Americans, but it's not just describing the contact itself. What change resulted? And can you use a proper noun? Can you do a second one? And briefly explain one example of how Native American societies resisted change brought by contact with Europeans in the same period. So let me give you an example of what this should look like. For letter A, it's not just discussing diseases, but it's talking about how diseases like smallpox, chickenpox, and other sorts of diseases were brought by Europeans to America, and the casualty rates for Native Americans sometimes approached as high as 90+% as they encountered a disease that they had not developed antibodies for. If you notice the parallel right now between the Native Americans and what is currently happening in our society with coronavirus, we've got a disease that we have never experienced before. If somebody ever tells you that we've had coronavirus in the past, we have. All coronavirus means is that there is a protein shell on this virus that is meant to link up with receptors inside of our cells. The exterior of the virus actually looks like a crown or a corona. And so that's what it uses to link up with our cells. This is known as the unique or the novel coronavirus, which means that we're experiencing one. We've had coronaviruses in the past. That's what gives you colds and flus. But we haven't had one like this that has bridged the animal-human barrier. So being able to describe how smallpox did this, but the introduction of maybe metal products like guns or the bringing of livestock to the United States. For this one, being able to describe like Pope's rebellion when it comes to the Spanish, or the Anglo-Powhatan War, or talking about maybe the Pequot War, using a proper noun is your key when it comes to these short answer essay questions. And if you feel like right now your content knowledge isn't strong enough to get that done, remember, you should have a study guide that you're using currently. You should be using flashcards. You should be preparing for the AP test. And in particular, go back to your concept outline, because you will find that this question right here is explored multiple times in your period 1 concept outline. Here's another question. Briefly explain one important similarity between the goals of the Spanish and the English in establishing colonies in the Americas prior to 1700. This is easily the type of question I could see the College Board throwing at you guys this spring, because of the fact that it bridges periods 1 and 2, and it would be a really good separator question. So if you take a look at the similarity between the goals of the Spanish and the English, again, if you go to the idea that economically they all wanted to make money, that is too shallow. That doesn't have a proper noun attached to it. So if you talked about the Spanish encomienda system to get wealth, and you compared it to mercantilism that the British were using, that would be a really great place to be. If you take a look at one important difference, just announcing the difference between Catholic and Protestant isn't good enough. But it being able to explain that with the encomienda system, there were priests that came from Spain to try to convert Native Americans to the Catholic faith. Meanwhile, in the English colonies, we had puritanical New England that came here to try to establish a Protestant city on a hill with John Winthrop. That's when you start impressing a reader, is by bringing in those proper nouns that not everybody will have. And in particular, they don't want to give away college credit just because you can simplistically quote a generality. They want to see you actually flashing the historical knowledge that you've gained and held on to throughout the course of the year. Question C, briefly explain one way in which the difference you indicated in B contributed to a difference in the development of Spanish and English colonial societies. The thing that we'll find with letter B is that with the Catholic faith and the development of an you have relationships happening between the Spanish and the Native American populations, resulting in a mestizo class. Conversion is quite easily, and it's not difficult to earn some sort of acceptance into the society. For the Puritans, though, the Puritans have a worldview that English people have a superiority, Puritans have a superiority, and the only way to become a Puritan is to convert and become one of those members of the elite. And they're not looking at Native Americans as being eligible to easily bridge that. So they do have praying towns that are on the frontier to try to bring Native Americans to Christianity, but they don't have that easy acceptance of Native Americans in their society that we saw going on with Native Americans in the Spanish societies in the South. So when we take a look at these sorts of questions, we'll be running through more of these types of questions when we get together tomorrow and we look at period 2. But here's what I would like you to be thinking about then as we wrap up with our session for today. We first of all wanted to be able to talk about the civil rights movement in the 1950s and the 1960s, not because of the fact that it's going to be a focal point for your essays. It might provide contextualization. And I'm still trying to keep you safe if they decide to throw some sort of curveball at us with like a different variety of an essay type prompt. So I have that video done for tomorrow. So we're able to discuss what was the situation like with civil rights at the time that World War II ended and during the Eisenhower presidency when we tried to desegregate. For you also, though, start doing your review process, and in particular, look over your concept outlines. And what you really should be identifying is if there's any areas in your concept outline that don't seem to make sense to you. The beauty of what this course is, though, is with your concept outline, we have got from the College Board explicit announcements that if you know everything in here, the College Board is not allowed to ask you any questions that aren't inside of the packets that I've given you. I gave you 9. It turns out you're only going to need 7. So with those 7 concept outlines, with the time that you've got between now and our test, if you look through the concept outline and you're able to say, I understand every single one of these concepts, I understand the details that they want me to use, I've got all of these proper nouns that I'm working on memorizing, that's where my 5s come from. We have a lot of kids who score 5s on the AP test, and it's not because of anything special that I do. It's about instead, these kids make sure that they don't have gaps in their knowledge. Now, the beauty is during the afternoons, I get to spend my time grading. So I'm going to be having you guys do some short answer essay questions from AP Classroom coming up soon, once I get some idea from the College Board of what we're supposed to be doing. But the nice thing is I've got now tons of free time to interact with you. So what I would encourage you to do is, if you find that there's a spot on the concept outline that you do not understand, you do not need to suffer in silence. Instead, what you should be doing is give me a heads up. Feel free to type a question if you want to. Although the thing that I'm missing the most right now, I am missing right now the flyby interactions, and especially for those kids who typically will come into class early, and it's easy for me to kind of chat with them for a little bit. That's the connection that's really missing when we do online learning, is the fact that in those moments we can clean up problems that you might be having that just seem small to you, but if that problem goes away, your stress goes away. So if you do find a concept in your study guide, let's say from period 2, 3, or whatever, and you look at it and you're like, I have no idea what I'm doing with this, I would encourage you guys, instead of being ashamed or sad, you don't need to be ashamed of anything. I am totally rooting for you and you are on my team. So if you look at something and you're like, oh man, Hohenstein's going to yell at me about the notes that I took, Hohenstein is going to be super thrilled that you right now are geared up about learning US history. And Hohenstein's going to be super excited to talk to you about that, to take where you are right now and turn it into a not yet. It's not that you don't know anything, it's that you don't yet know something. And if it's the result of mistakes that you made when you were 15, you're about to see a mistake happen with me, because one of the mistakes that I made is I did not go and get my haircut done before the fact that our haircut styling places are now closed. I am now on the, Grant, I see you too. Your flow is sick. I am super excited. Like right now, inside of my wife's community, Delano got 2 people on the hockey hair video for the state tournament. One was the head coach, whose flow is sick, and it's full because he's 20 years younger than me. Their goalie got on there because he gave the intense stare right as he came out to the blue line. I'm about to give you the opposite version of that, where you're in the next month, you might see the beginnings of my hockey hair, which was tragic. I've got this Hohenstein wave that's building up right here. My mullet in the back curls up in nasty ringlets that look awful. And so I made huge mistakes when I was 15. If you did too, get over yourself. So feel free to send me a message. If you say to me, hey, I need you to explain this concept, or can we talk this over? We absolutely can. And that's kind of the freedom that we've got right now. Is in the past, I'd have to teach this class 3 times throughout the day. We'd have limited time to talk to one another. We don't have that problem anymore. So please reach out to me and let me know if that's something that you need. I've got a few different chat questions that popped up. And so, Sophia, it says here, one of the AP people mentioned that, like a college exam, these exams will be open book, open notes. Will you be able to use the concept outline? Wouldn't this make it really hard to create a testing curve if everyone is getting questions right, if they get to use their study guides? That is a really good question, Sophia. And so what I'm waiting to find out from the College Board is they created for us a lockdown tool that they advertised for the AP Classroom that we never used in class. I just would set up in the back of the classroom when you guys were testing electronically. We were only doing the formative stuff. We were about to do the summative. And you've asked the $1 million question. If they do have a lockdown tool that they're advertising using, one of the questions that we're wrestling with is, for some kids, they don't have any computer that they can use. So that's going to be a hardship for them. For some kids, though, the computer is all they can use. And so if the lockdown tool prevents them from searching Google, that would be a problem for them. Most teachers around the country don't copy this for their kids. It's one of the things that when I do my summer institutes, I try to explain that every question on the AP test is inside there. Not every kid is being taught like you guys. So most kids go into the AP test blind that this is what they should be using. The other thing that's troubling us, though, is if you're a kid like you guys, some of you guys have multiple technology devices where you've got your Chromebook and you've got a phone. So even if they lock down your Chromebook, you'd be able to Google search a bunch of stuff. They've been saying that with the stuff that you're going to be doing for your exam, it's going to be difficult enough that it's going to make it difficult for you to cheat in a way that will earn you points. I don't know how they're going to pull that off. That's why I'm really eager to hear about the meeting on Thursday night. So I think you're asking the question that all of us have been wrestling with. And I'm hoping to have more details for you on Friday as far as what that looks like. My bet, though, is that this test is going to have some flexibility to it because of the fact that you're in such a weird situation. We're right now, like I mentioned with coronavirus, we're wrestling with the fact that for 2 months we didn't ramp up with our supplies, and so we're looking at a much longer quarantine because of the fact that we didn't like go full on like World War II arsenal democracy on this whole thing. Whether that's realistic that we could have is the question in and of itself. But because we don't have enough ventilators and masks inside of our hospitals, we actually have emergency rooms that are getting into trouble. And what troubled President Trump last night is they're bringing refrigeration trucks to New York City to store the dead bodies because they don't have enough people to be able to bury them quickly. I mean, you're looking at really extremely weird times that you're living through. And so for the College Board and for all of us, we're just trying to figure out how to wrap our hands around this. And an AP test and the fidelity of it is something that they're going to try to figure out. But if they mess it up and it's a little bit too kind to you guys, I don't think that they're too worried about that. Stella, are we going to go over each period like we did today? Absolutely. So we're going to be doing periods 1 through 7. Tomorrow is period 2. But my assumption is that with periods 2 through 7, I'll be able to focus more on content now that I've taught you how to use your concept outlines. So for you guys, I'm going to assume that when you look through your concept outlines, you look at the concepts and understand that's where your questions are going to come from, and that you actually do some preparation beforehand. So when you look at period 2, look at the examples that they give you for how to support a concept, figure out what your proper nouns are, and then we'll start doing more practice essays once we get some insights from the College Board as far as what we're supposed to be looking for. But if you understand that the concept outline itself, they're talking about the format of the test, concept outline isn't going to change. And so if you're good with that, then you should be good. Audrey, what study guide do you recommend? Any of them are going to be good. The one that I've found that kids and teachers like the most is called AMSCO. And so let me bring that up for you right here. And I just need to click over so it's not my face, but instead my computer screen. So AMSCO right here is a publishing company that has this book that is aligned with the AP test. A lot of kids like this one because it's something where if you want to read it as a text, they kind of give you the nuts and bolts of exactly what it is that you need to know from each of the different time periods. And then they've got practice tests included inside there. I'm not certain though how these companies are doing as far as being able to ship stuff out. I know that Amazon has now gone to only shipping some like vital resources. So you might be in a catch as catch can sort of situation where you may need to go to Amazon, Barnes and Noble, whatever, and see what resources you can find. I would say that a book like that though, and a flashcard box would not be a bad idea to have during this time period. And in particular, these are the flashcards that I showed you previously. These things are phenomenal because of the fact that on the front, if you do order one of these sets, they give you something that looks like Columbian Exchange right here. On the back side, it gives you all of the details. Here's your proper nouns and details that you can use. Oftentimes they give it to you with a ring included in the box itself. And what students will regularly do is they'll just flip through these things. And as they get a card down to the point where they know that those proper nouns are good, they'll just take that card off the ring, and then they will just grab another pack and start working their way through. These flashcards are also numbered in order. So if you want to work your way through time periods, the best way to use the flashcards is to look at your concept outline, figure out what problems you have, look at your flashcards and think about where on the concept outline they might fit. And that's a really easy way to accumulate your content fast so that you're able to identify what periods you are good with. And then once you get done doing that, if you look back through your concept outline and realize there's some concepts that have no proper nouns, you should be in a really safe place. Let me see here. Sophia, can we find the SAQ presentation that you showed earlier in Schoology? Are you talking about, Sophia, I'm asking a question directly to you. And you can unmute your microphone if you want to ask verbally, or are you talking about the PowerPoint that I was showing you today, or is it something earlier in the year that you're talking about? The PowerPoint itself? The PowerPoint is something that I'm going to be giving out to you guys as we move our way forward. Actually, you've got a really good idea. I'll share that with you so that you're able to look through it because it is going to be practice for us anyways. I do plan on using these essay questions, though, as our guidance as we're working our way through instruction, but there's no reason to keep that kind of hidden and held back. And so if you look inside your Google outline, I'll try converting this into a Google document that then like Google Slides so that you'll be able to then look at that later today. Nora, will we still be having review sessions outside of class like we would if we were still at school? This is going to give us a hybrid version instead, and it's kind of up in the air. So when we take a look at what we're doing, like right now, I'm able to hand off to you guys flipped classroom stuff with doing your civil rights movement documentary worksheet. And in particular, we're doing that because of the fact that Google Meet showed me earlier this week that it can't keep up with video that I'm trying to stream. There's a lag to it. So I'm going to need to hand off video work to you guys that would be direct instruction. I'll be able to do the PowerPoint stuff then with you guys personally. And then hopefully in the next couple of days, we get some guidance as far as what assessment looks like. So I realize you guys are on hold. You guys should continue reading from your textbook. I'll give you a lot of heads up time before we start doing any assessments. But then once we find out what the College Board's parameters are going to be for the test, you and we will all be figuring out then if we need to take more additional time than what we're doing in the mornings. You should understand, though, we are in a really good position from the standpoint that most kids around the country have not had any exposure to AP Classroom. I was hired before the start of the school year to work with the AP Partners program to test drive every element of AP Classroom. And you've done almost all of the practice that was available for you guys to get ready for periods 1 through 8. And so we're now up to speed with how they wanted to scaffold to this point. Content-wise, we were already in the 1960s when they shut down our school. There are schools around the country that are still not done with World War I. And they're now trying to figure out how do they, outside of class, get that content wrapped up as well as covering skills. So Nora, I think what's going to be happening is we will have a lot more information tomorrow night at 7 p.m. that I will be able to share with you on Friday. And then I'll be able to give you more guidance as far as what we're doing there if we need to do more. Because if all they're doing is SAQs, we've been crushing on SAQs for the past couple of months, and you guys have been looking really good with that. And for the people who haven't been scoring great, most people are struggling because of that proper noun piece that we can now start working on. Do you guys have any other questions before I wrap up for today? All right. If you sent me a friend request on my PlayStation, I have not had a chance to get around to you. If you did, I've got a question for you. So if you would put into your chat, if you did send me a friend request, are you playing Call of Duty or are you playing MLB? Just so I know what I'm going to be looking for. Again, I'm horrifically bad at both, but it would be fantastic to show you how horrifically bad I am in person. So again, my gamer tag is JPH-AHS on the PlayStation. If you're Xbox, I believe they go cross-platform with Call of Duty. And so I am eager to see if any of you guys are interested in probably beating the daylights out of me. If I'm on your team, we're going to lose, but it'll be spectacular. I'll bust out all sorts of World War II style strategies, trying to flank the opponent until they shoot me because I'm a noob. So anyway, you guys have a great day today. Be smart with your decision making. If you touch any surfaces outside of your home, just keep some hand sanitizer or wash your hands or whatever. I appreciate the thank yous at the end of this. You get my thank you back at you, though, because when I think about being your age, you guys have maturity and you're going through things that I never had to go through, and I'm amazed at what you guys are capable of doing on a daily basis. So just keep up the good work. Let me know if I can help you out. We'll be back together tomorrow at 8 a.m. And like I said, I'm going to try to convert that PowerPoint immediately so that hopefully I can get that out to you guys if that's something you want to use. Make sure you click on the attendance so your attendance is taken care of. And I'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day, guys. I don't have my phone in here.